Hello everyone. Welcome to Dead Time Stories. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's story. The rain had a rhythm, a relentless, shushing cadence that coated everything in a strange hush. The world outside Lydia's windshield was a blurred smear of trees, road signs, and shadows. Her old Civic's wipers groaned against the glass, squealing just enough to set her teeth on edge every few passes. It was nearly 12:30 a.m., and she'd been driving for hours. Her shift at the diner had ended late. An after-hours plumbing emergency had held her and 3 others behind. Everyone else had arrived. Lydia, ever stubborn, had said she was fine on her own. She regretted that now. The GPS on her phone had frozen miles back, stuck at a looping circle and a message, recalculating route. She hadn't seen another car in over 30 minutes, not even headlights in the opposite lane. There was nothing but woods on either side, thick, dark, pressing in too close to the road like a living thing. Then she saw him. A figure on the shoulder of the road. His form blurred by the rain and shadows, but unmistakable. Someone standing there, arm outstretched, thumb raised. She almost passed him. Almost. But her foot eased up on the gas as if disconnected from her thoughts. Something inside her, a flicker of empathy, or maybe just loneliness, made her slow to a crawl. Her headlights lit him up fully now, a man in a drenched coat, long and dark, with a collar turned up and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. She rolled the passenger window down an inch, water speckling her arm. "Need a ride?" His voice was gravel-smoothed. "Just up north. Anywhere safe." Safe. A weird word, Lydia thought, but nodded. She hit the lock button with a tiny pang in her gut and unlocked the door. The man slid in silently. He didn't smell like cigarettes or beer, just rain and something earthy, like moss and rotting leaves. He didn't thank her, just nodded, his face mostly hidden in the dark under his cap. Lydia pulled back onto the road, trying to focus. "Name's Lydia," she offered, her voice too loud. Silence stretched before he answered. "Nathan." No last name. No return question. She kept driving. "Long way from town," she said, glancing sideways. "You live out this way?" Nathan's head turned just slightly. "Not anymore." She gave a tight smile, regretting her decision already. But it was late, and her conscience wouldn't have let her drive past. Another mile. The tension crawled into the car like cold air through a cracked window. Lydia kept one hand tight on the wheel, the other resting tensely near the window buttons. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the man's stillness. Nathan hadn't moved much since getting in. He just sat there, soaked and silent, as though carved from the darkness itself. She tried to break the tension again. "Where exactly are you headed?" "I mean, I'm going up through Hollow Creek, if that helps." Nathan didn't look at her. "Anywhere that isn't here." Her knuckles whitened on the wheel. She gave a little laugh, thin and dry. "Yeah, I guess we all feel that way sometimes." Another sign blurred past in the headlights, Miller's Hollow, 11 miles. Lydia frowned. She didn't remember Miller's Hollow on the map. It wasn't a place she'd ever driven through before, and she'd worked at the diner for 3 years now. She should have passed it at least once. The sign looked old. Warped. Almost handmade. Her eyes drifted to the rearview mirror, and caught something strange. A footprint. Small. Wet. Smudged across the center of the back seat. Her heart gave a tiny stutter. Maybe it was from an earlier passenger. Her niece had been in the car last weekend. Maybe she'd climbed in with damp shoes. But this print looked fresh, newly pressed into the fabric, the moisture still seeping into the seat. She looked again. Another print had joined the first. They trailed toward the driver's side. Lydia flicked her eyes to Nathan. He hadn't noticed. Or at least pretended not to. His posture was unchanged, still facing forward. She tried to keep her tone even. "Did you happen to sit in the back before I picked you up?" "No," he said flatly. "Why?" Lydia shook her head. "Nothing. Just thought I saw something weird." Nathan's lips moved slightly, though he didn't smile. "Weird things follow people who stop." She didn't respond. Just flicked on the cabin light for a moment. No one was in the back seat. No sign of movement. No child. No drifter. Just those two small, wet footprints fading slowly into the upholstery. Her skin prickled. "Okay, that's enough." She turned off the light. "Sorry," she muttered, mostly to herself. "Just tired." Nathan said nothing. The wipers kept their rhythm. The rain kept falling. And the woods outside the car windows seemed to draw closer with every passing mile, like they were watching her too. The heat in the car felt suddenly oppressive, like it was seeping out of the vents in waves. Lydia reached down and twisted the knob, turning it off. The silence that followed was immediate, but not comforting. She cracked her window, just a bit, letting the rain mist in. The fresh air didn't help. Nathan shifted beside her for the first time in miles. The sound of his coat brushing against the seat was louder than it should have been, like fabric dragging over old leather. She didn't look at him. "There's something in the back seat," he said. Lydia almost slammed on the brakes. Instead, her hands tightened against the wheel. "What?" he repeated himself, calmly, as though stating the weather. "There's something in the back seat." Lydia's heart pounded against her ribs. She didn't want to look in the mirror again, but her eyes flicked up anyway. The seat was empty. No movement. No shape. But the footprints were no longer just two. There were 4 now. Then 5. Trailing upward. Like a child crawling toward her seat. She turned her head slightly, peering over her shoulder. Nothing. But her stomach dropped. The air back there felt heavier. Like something unseen was sitting just out of sight, waiting. "Nathan," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Are you messing with me?" He looked at her now, his eyes almost glowing in the faint light from the dashboard. "You let it in when you opened the door." Lydia's mouth was dry. "What the hell are you talking about?" He didn't answer. Just looked back to the road. "They ride with people who stop. That doesn't mean anything," she snapped, voice rising. "You're freaking me out." Nathan sighed. Not annoyed, resigned. "It doesn't care how scared you are." Lydia swallowed hard. "What is it?" Behind them, something tapped the glass. Once. Then twice. Soft and deliberate, like a fingertip against the rear window. Lydia jerked in her seat and looked into the rearview mirror again. Still nothing. But the tapping continued. 3 more times. Tap. 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 She pulled over. The car slowed to a crawl and rolled to a stop on the side of the road. The hazard lights blinked red through the mist. She turned in her seat slowly. There was nothing behind them but trees, shadows, and rain. Nathan didn't move. Lydia reached for the door handle. "Don't," he said quietly. She froze. "Why not?" she whispered. "Because once you see it," he said, his voice dark and low, "it sees you too." Lydia's hand hovered over the door handle. Her breath caught somewhere between her ribs and her throat. Outside, the trees stood like sentinels, unmoving despite the wind. The tapping had stopped, but its echo remained in her mind, a phantom sound. She pulled her hand back into her lap, slowly, as if the thing outside might hear. Nathan hadn't taken his eyes off the windshield. "Once it knows you're aware of it, it doesn't stop." Lydia's voice came out in a whisper. "What is it?" He finally turned to her, and in the glow of the hazard lights blinking against his cheek, he looked older. Worn down. Eyes ringed with the kind of exhaustion you didn't get from sleepless nights alone. It's what's left behind when someone disappears. She shook her head, heart racing. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to, he said. You don't find it, it finds you. Usually when you're alone. Driving late. When you think no one's watching. Lydia turned the ignition key slightly and shut off the hazards, plunging them into deeper darkness. She was starting to feel like she'd made a very big mistake. How do you know all this? She asked. Nathan let the silence stretch long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, because I stopped too. The weight of his words pressed against her chest. She took a deep breath. There's nothing back there. Yet, he said. It builds slowly. First the footprints. Then the tapping. Then, a voice came from the back seat. Small. Fragile. A child's whisper. Mom? Lydia's entire body went cold. Her foot slipped off the brake and the car jerked slightly forward before she stomped it back down. She twisted around. Who's there? But the seat was empty. No one there. Just the same faint wet footprints, and a new one, slightly larger than the rest. Still glistening. Nathan spoke calmly. It knows your name now. Lydia felt a tear slide down her cheek. She hadn't even realized she was crying. The whisper came again. Closer. Mom, why'd you leave me here? She gasped and turned to Nathan. It's not real. This isn't real. I don't have a kid. I don't. It doesn't matter, he said softly. It's not your memory. It's just trying them out. Another whisper. This one from the side window. Let me in. Lydia reached for the gear shift with trembling fingers. Nathan didn't stop her this time. You can drive, he said. But you won't outrun it. Lydia slammed the car into drive and stomped on the gas. The tires screeched slightly on the wet road before catching traction, and the Civic surged forward. Her heart raced with every tap of rain on the windshield, every dark shape between the trees blurring past her window. The road ahead twisted through thick woods, barely wide enough for two cars to pass. The beams of her headlights caught flickers of movement between the trees, but it could have been deer. It could have been. Nathan sat silent beside her, hands folded in his lap, unmoved by the sudden burst of speed. His stillness was infuriating. She gripped the wheels so hard her fingers ached. Why the hell aren't you doing anything? I told you, he said softly. You can't run from it. You're just trying to scare me, she snapped. None of this is real. The footprints, the voice, maybe you did something to my car. You planted that crap back there. His eyes didn't leave the windshield. You think I wanted to be here? She opened her mouth to argue, but another whisper cut through the cabin. Not from behind this time, but from directly between the two front seats. You forgot me! She screamed and nearly swerved off the road. When she looked back in the rearview mirror, her stomach dropped. A face. Pressed against the seat behind her. Small. Pale. Lips just parted. Eyes wide and black and empty as a starless sky. And gone again before she could finish a blink. Lydia gasped and stared ahead, jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. Nathan spoke again, his voice like sandpaper on her nerves. It's not a ghost, if that's what you're thinking. Not a spirit. Not a soul left behind. It's older than that. Then what is it? She shouted, voice cracking. I don't know what it is, he said. Only what it wants. Lydia shivered. And what's that? Nathan turned to her, finally meeting her eyes. To be noticed. To be remembered. To be real. That hit her in a place deeper than fear. Outside, the trees suddenly thinned and gave way to open fields. A barn stood to the right, rotted and half collapsed. The road curved left. Then the headlights picked up something just ahead. A figure, standing in the center of the road. Child-sized. Unmoving. Lydia slammed the brakes, tires shrieking on the slick pavement as the car skidded to a stop just feet from the figure. Her heart pounded so loudly it seemed to echo inside the car. The headlights bathed the small form in a pale yellow glow. It looked like a child, maybe 7 or 8 years old, drenched and barefoot. A dress clung to her tiny frame, heavy with water. Her long, black hair matted to her cheeks, which were unnaturally pale. The girl's arms hung limp at her sides, her fingers twitching like she couldn't quite remember how to use them. But it was the eyes that stopped Lydia cold. Wide. Black. Not dark from shadow, but truly black, bottomless and reflective like twin oil slicks. No irises. No whites. Just void. "Do not open the door," Nathan said, the command in his voice cutting through the haze of terror. Lydia didn't respond. Her breath steamed the inside of the windshield as she stared. The child stepped forward. The Civic's headlights flickered. Just once. Nathan leaned toward her, his voice low and sharp. "It wants you to think it's helpless. Familiar. It's not. Don't look away from it. And don't look too long." Lydia's fingers hovered over the gear shift again. "What happens if I look too long?" Nathan said nothing. The girl raised one arm. Slowly. Like it took effort. She pointed at Lydia. Her mouth moved. But no sound came out. Just the shape of the words, over and over. "You see me. You see me. You see me." Lydia's pulse spiked. The temperature in the car seemed to drop a dozen degrees. She could feel the cold air radiating off the windows. She saw her breath now, fogging the air like mist. She jammed the gear shift into reverse. The girl didn't react. Lydia floored it. The car jolted backward, tires skidding slightly before gaining traction. She kept her eyes on the road, avoiding the rearview mirror entirely this time. She didn't want to know if the girl was following. Nathan looked out the side window, his brow furrowed. "You'll keep seeing her now. Every few miles. Different place. Same face." Lydia gritted her teeth. "So what? I just drive until it gives up?" Nathan shook his head slowly. "It doesn't give up." She glanced at him. "Then why the hell are you so calm? I've had more time with it than you." The headlights flickered again. And just beyond the curve in the road, there she was. Again. Standing in the center. Waiting. Lydia slammed the brakes again. The girl, stood motionless, arms dangling at her sides like broken branches. Same dress. Same dripping hair. Same eyes like dark holes in reality. Lydia couldn't speak. Her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. Her vision pulsed at the edges. It wasn't possible. She had just seen the girl behind her. Nathan leaned forward, his voice steadier than it had any right to be. "It's not really there. Not in the way you think. It's folding around you. Each time you look, it gets closer to being real." She turned to him, her voice trembling. "Then how do we stop it?" "We don't," he said. Lydia's hands began to tremble on the steering wheel. The girl hadn't moved. Not an inch. But her head tilted slowly to one side, like a predator examining something new and pathetic. A weak mouse. A broken bird. "She wants in," Lydia whispered. "She's already in," Nathan replied, and turned his head just enough to gesture toward the back seat. Lydia didn't want to look. She didn't want to know. But she did. Just a flicker of her eyes to the mirror. There. The girl, closer now, was seated directly behind Lydia's seat. Legs folded. Hands on her knees. Her head tilted at an unnatural angle, chin nearly to collarbone. eyes still wide. Still wrong. But this time, she smiled. A twitch. A curl. A grin that looked too deliberate. Like it had been practiced in a mirror without knowing what smiles meant. Lydia gasped and looked forward again, slamming the car into drive. As she passed the version of the girl standing in the road, it vanished. No fanfare. No flicker of smoke. It was simply gone. Nathan didn't say a word. Lydia's breaths came in short, shallow bursts. Her hands slick with sweat, even as the air inside the car remained unnaturally cold. "What does she want?" she whispered, voice almost childlike now. Nathan sighed, almost mournful. "A ride. Forever." The words hit her harder than they should have. She didn't know why they felt so final. So heavy. She risked a glance into the mirror again. The back seat was empty. The footprints, however, had multiplied. Wet. Pale. Inhumanly small. Trailing up the seat. Across the headrest. As if the girl had crawled out of sight, just inches behind her neck. Lydia gripped the wheel harder, knuckles stark white. Nathan's voice was quiet now. "Do you feel her breathing yet?" Lydia didn't answer. She couldn't. Because yes, she could feel it. A faint, irregular warmth against the nape of her neck. As if someone was sitting directly behind her, exhaling slowly. Hesitantly. Like a child who didn't understand lungs or restraint. Her stomach twisted into a knot. "She's right behind me, isn't she?" Nathan didn't answer. Because he didn't have to. The silence filled the car again, heavier now. The rain continued its endless percussion on the roof, but it was muffled, muted. The only thing Lydia could truly hear was her own pulse, hammering in her ears, and that breath. That too slow, too hollow breath. And then, sniff. A tiny, delicate inhalation just behind her ear. Sharp and sudden. She yelped and flinched away, nearly veering the car off the road. She forced herself to straighten, eyes flicking wildly between the road and the mirror. Still no one. Still the prince. But now, the passenger window began to fog. Not from Lydia. Not from Nathan. From something else. Something exhaling from the back seat. The mist formed a vague shape in the condensation, a handprint. Small. Palm first. 5 tiny fingers pressing outward like it wanted to push through the glass. She turned off the vent entirely. Still the mist remained. Nathan's voice was quiet. "Careful. The more you acknowledge her, the stronger she gets. Fear is food to it." "Then I must be a damn buffet right now," Lydia muttered, trying not to cry. "She wants you to be scared," he said. "She needs you to be. That's how she takes shape. How she anchors." Lydia's throat tightened. "Anchors?" Nathan turned his head slowly, finally looking her full in the face. "She can't live without a host. She rides with you until you're hollow." Lydia's mind reeled. "Then what? She kills me?" "No," he said. "You stop being you." A pause. "You become the next thing that waits on the side of the road." The words hit her like a slap. The image of herself, standing soaked and silent by the shoulder of Route 19, with her thumb out and empty eyes, flickered behind her eyelid. Lydia wanted to scream, to pull over and flee into the dark woods, anything to escape the crawling sensation along her spine. But she didn't. She just drove, the road coiling in her headlights like a black ribbon laid out by something patient and cruel. The handprint on the passenger window began to smear downward. Not wiped away, but dragged. Like fingers were being pressed harder against the glass. Like the thing behind her didn't understand its own strength. Nathan's breath was slow and measured beside her, too calm, like he'd seen all of this before. Survived it. Or maybe not survived so much as endured it. Lydia chanced another look at the rearview mirror. A shape this time. Vague, but unmistakable. Hunched. Slight. Like a child kneeling on the seat. Her face was turned downward, long black hair veiling her expression. But the outline of her form, it was more solid now. Before, it had been a trick of the eye. Now it was there. "I need to stop," Lydia muttered. "No," Nathan said immediately. "You stop, she climbs in for good." "I can't, I'm going to pass out," she whispered, her hands trembling on the wheel. "You don't need to stop. You need to listen." "To you?" Lydia snapped. "Why the hell should I trust you?" Nathan didn't respond right away. Then, "Because I already let her in. And I've been trying to get out ever since." The words were so quiet she almost missed them. Lydia blinked, glancing sideways. "What do you mean?" Nathan didn't look at her. His voice was flat. Distant. 10 years ago. I was on this road. Different car. Same rain. Picked up a kid standing barefoot near a ditch. She never spoke. Just looked at me through the mirror. Then came the tapping. The prints. The whispers. She said my name. Lydia's lips parted. Nathan continued. I drove for 3 days. Through towns that didn't exist. Roads that didn't end. Every time I tried to pull over, she got closer. Then what? Lydia asked. I gave up, he said simply. I stopped. I opened the door. I let her ride in the front. Lydia stared at him. But she's in the back now. Nathan slowly turned to her. Exactly. The temperature dropped again. Lydia's breath fogged the inside of the windshield. The girl behind her giggled. It wasn't the kind of laugh that belonged to a happy child. It was small, breathy, like someone trying to imitate joy but getting the rhythm wrong. A sound dredged from beneath the floorboards of memory, not something that had ever echoed from a living throat. Lydia's hands clutched the steering wheel like a lifeline. You let her sit in the front? Nathan nodded once. I thought if I stopped running, if I accepted her, maybe she'd leave me alone. She didn't. Then why is she in the back again? Lydia asked, panic lacing her voice. Because now I'm not the driver. His words sank in slowly. She glanced at him. You've been waiting for someone like me? I didn't choose this, he said quickly. She did. She always does. Lydia's chest ached. Then why help me? He looked at her for the first time since he started the story, his expression unreadable. Because maybe if you don't stop, if you keep moving, maybe you can outrun what I couldn't. She didn't know what to say to that. Behind her, the giggle was replaced by a rustling. A wet, slithering shift of limbs over fabric. She didn't dare look. But she could feel her. The little girl's head was close. Too close. Lydia could almost picture her right cheek inches from her neck, mouth half open, breath warm and sour from old, forgotten things. Nathan whispered, Don't turn around. Not again. Lydia swallowed hard. Then what do I do? Nathan leaned forward, watching the road. You drive until she fades. For how long? He didn't answer. The trees on either side grew thicker, the road narrower, the darkness deeper. Even the rain seemed quieter here. Like it didn't want to disturb whatever lived in this stretch of road. Lydia's shoulders ached from tension. In the mirror, she saw the girl's hands now, small fingers crawling up the edge of the seat, inching toward her shoulder. Her nails were wrong. Grayish, like they'd been buried too long. Lydia bit her lip until she tasted blood. She's touching me, she whispered. She's trying to, Nathan said. She's seeing how close she can get. Why? To see how much of you she can take before you let her drive. The phrase let her drive stuck to Lydia's thoughts like sap, sticky and impossible to shake off. The girl's presence behind her was no longer a suspicion or a shadow. It was physical now. Palpable. And it was learning her. Every time Lydia reacted, every shiver, every glance, it grew bolder. She's not just mimicking, Lydia murmured. She's watching me. She's becoming you, Nathan said quietly. Piece by piece. Lydia's mind raced. That doesn't make sense. She's not even real. She wasn't. Until you saw her. Lydia's breath caught. Then what happens if I stop seeing her? Nathan's voice took on a grim edge. She'll make sure you never look away again. A thud. Soft. Damp. Lydia flinched and glanced instinctively into the rearview mirror. The girl was crouched behind her now, her knees pressed into the seat, hands gripping the headrest. Her face was inches away from Lydia's, tilted, curious, lips slightly parted. Her eyes were huge and wet, like ink pools slowly absorbing the light around them. Lydia looked away instantly, heart in her throat. Nathan sighed. She's close. Too close. The girl made a noise then, a long, drawn-out hum. Like a lullaby missing its notes. A sound made by someone who had heard a song once and forgotten most of it. Off-key and broken. And beneath it, another voice. Faint. A whisper threading through the hum. I know where you live now. Lydia slammed her fist against the steering wheel. How do I stop this? How did you survive? I didn't, Nathan said, and his voice was distant again, hollow. Not really. Lydia turned to him slowly. His features were paler now. His skin, washed in the red of the dash lights, seemed stretched. Like a copy of a copy. His eyes were duller. Faded. Her voice cracked. What are you? I'm what's left when she's done, he said softly. A passenger. The realization dropped into her like a stone into water. You're not helping me, she whispered. You're just passing her along. Nathan's expression was mournful. It was always going to be someone. Better you than another child. Or someone weak. The girl's hands gripped the sides of Lydia's seat now. Her voice was right behind Lydia's ear. Your turn. Lydia's foot pressed harder on the gas, but the road ahead didn't change. It curved endlessly, looping through trees that looked too identical to be real. Like a backdrop in an old video game. The headlights cast long, lazy shadows that seemed to lean in toward the car, watching. Listening. You used me, she said through clenched teeth, eyes never leaving the road. Nathan said nothing. You could have warned me sooner. Told me what she was. What you are. I tried, he murmured. But you were already slowing down. The memory surfaced unbidden, that moment on the roadside, the silhouette in the rain, her hesitation before unlocking the door. She picked you, Nathan said. I was just the vehicle. The bridge. You felt sorry for me. Lydia did remember the feeling, that little ache in her chest when she saw him, drenched and alone. A human instinct. A kindness. Now it felt like a curse. Behind her, the girl was moving, slowly shifting in her seat. Her breath now came in short, stuttering puffs, closer to panting than breathing. Her small fingers clutched Lydia's shoulder through the seat's fabric. Not hurting. Not yet. Just claiming. Lydia's mind clawed for reason. Why me? Why this road? She likes people who can see her. Really see her. That's how she gets strong. Then what happens when she's strong enough? Nathan glanced at her, and for the first time, there was pity in his eyes. Then she doesn't need the back seat anymore. Lydia nearly swerved. She'll take over. She becomes you. The girl whispered again, her voice like frost across skin. I can do better. I can smile longer. Talk sweeter. Be you. Lydia shook her head, sweat trickling down her temple. No. No, I won't let her. There's got to be a way to end this. She doesn't like fire, Nathan said suddenly. Lydia blinked. What? Heat. Light. Noise. Real things. They remind her she's not. Lydia's eyes darted around the dash. The cigarette lighter was long gone. No matches. She didn't smoke. No flares. Then her eyes landed on the glove compartment. What if I burn her out? Lydia asked, a desperate edge creeping into her voice. Nathan didn't answer. He was watching her again. Carefully. Cautiously. Like he wasn't sure if she was still Lydia anymore. Lydia reached for the glove compartment with a trembling hand, never taking her eyes fully off the road. The handle was slick with condensation, and it resisted her at first, almost like the car didn't want it to open. She pulled harder, and it snapped free with a click. Inside, crumpled napkins, a broken flashlight, a gas station map, and thank God, a half-empty bottle of cheap hand sanitizer. The label was faded, but the alcohol scent punched through the cold air like a flare. She unscrewed the cap and held it tightly in her lap. The girl behind her went still. The air thickened. Nathan's voice dropped to a near whisper. She knows. Lydia's fingers hovered near the back of her seat. She didn't know what she was doing, really, just following instinct, or maybe fear. She unscrewed the cap the rest of the way and tilted it slowly, letting the cold, clear liquid dribble onto the fabric between the seats. Behind her, the girl made a sound. A hiss. Halfway between a gasp and a whimper. Lydia dared a glance in the mirror. The girl had shifted back slightly, her face scrunched in something that looked like rage. Or was it pain? Her pale hands curled into fists. She doesn't like it, Lydia muttered. She remembers fire, Nathan said. Even if she's never felt it. Lydia grabbed a napkin and soaked it in sanitizer. She hesitated, then cracked her window, just slightly. Cold air rushed in. Rain dotted her arm. She found the broken flashlight in the glove box and fumbled it open. The batteries were corroded. Dead. No spark. Damn it, she muttered, voice shaking. The girl leaned forward again. Close. Too close. I'll be gentle, she whispered. Something unseen brushed Lydia's hair. I will be you. Lydia's panic swelled, her vision tunneling. She looked down at the sanitizer bottle, then at the soaked napkin in her hand. Without thinking, she twisted her body and flung the wet napkin behind her. It struck something, and the scream that followed was inhuman. A shrill, fractured wail, like broken glass dragged over a chalkboard, like the shriek of a child being born into darkness for the second time. The back seat flashed, just for a moment, as if lit from within. Lydia smelled something burnt, like charred cloth, or scorched teeth. She swerved, regaining control just as the road straightened. The back seat was empty again. But only for now. The silence afterward was oppressive. It wasn't relief, it was waiting. Lydia's chest heaved as she struggled to breathe through the adrenaline. Her eyes darted to the rearview mirror again and again, half expecting the girl to rematerialize with that twitching grin and black, hollow stare. But the seat behind her was empty. No footprints now. No giggle. No breath on her neck. Nathan remained quiet, his hands folded again in his lap, though his eyes never stopped watching her. What the hell was that? Lydia finally asked, her voice hoarse. Did I hurt her? You didn't hurt her, Nathan said. You reminded her. Of what? Of what it's like to be nothing. Lydia tightened her grip on the wheel. So she was something once? Nathan nodded slightly. Maybe. Before the road. Before the ride. Before she became what she is now. You said she doesn't like fire. She doesn't like being noticed for what she really is. It breaks her illusion. Cracks her mask. Lydia's knuckles were white against the wheel. Then we do it again. It won't work twice, Nathan said. She adapts. There was a long silence before he added, "You bought yourself time. That's all." Lydia looked out at the road again. It was still raining, though not as heavily now. Just a light mist, more like a memory of rain than the real thing. The trees thinned briefly, revealing a roadside diner up ahead, dark windows, crooked signs swaying in the wind, the parking lot cracked and glittering with puddles. "Look," she said, pointing. Nathan's brow furrowed. "I don't remember that being here." Lydia didn't either. But something about it pulled at her, a flicker of warmth and normalcy. Light glowed faintly from the interior, soft yellow through dirty windows. A neon sign buzzed, open, though only one letter flickered with life. She slowed the car. "I'm stopping." "You shouldn't," Nathan said firmly. "I need a second. To think. To breathe. I'm not letting her in, just getting out of the car." Nathan's jaw tightened. "It's not her I'm worried about." Lydia parked, engine humming. She looked at him, voice steady. "You coming with me?" But Nathan was already looking out the window at the diner, his expression unreadable. "I've been here before," he whispered. "This isn't a stop, it's a test." Lydia stared at him. "A test?" Nathan nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the diner's front door. The road builds places for her. Traps shaped like comfort. Like choice. She narrowed her eyes. "It looks real. It feels real," Nathan said. "That's the trick." The rain had lightened to a whisper, mist curling along the asphalt like breath. The diner's flickering neon sign buzzed faintly in the distance, open though the P blinked off and on in uneven pulses, like a heartbeat on the verge of failure. Inside, a single bulb swung lazily above a booth. A silhouette sat at the counter. A person, unmoving, hunched forward as if they'd fallen asleep, or collapsed. Lydia's instinct screamed to drive away. But she couldn't. "Not yet. I need to know what this is," she said. "I can't just keep running." Nathan didn't argue. But he didn't get out either. "You go in," he said, "but don't eat. Don't sit. Don't speak to them unless they speak first. And whatever happens, don't accept anything. Not even coffee?" she said, trying to joke, though her throat was dry. Nathan just looked at her. "Not even water." Lydia opened the door and stepped into the rain. The cold hit her like a slap, but it felt real, solid. The car door closed behind her with a thump that echoed too long in the stillness. The world seemed quieter now. She crossed the parking lot, her boots splashing through shallow puddles. The gravel crunched beneath her feet. The open sign buzzed louder the closer she got. Her fingers hovered over the door handle, and for a split second, she thought she saw movement in the reflection. Her own face, but twisted. Pale. Grinning. She blinked. Gone. She pushed the door open. A bell above the door jingled softly. The scent of stale grease, burnt coffee, and something older wafted out to meet her. The lights buzzed overhead. The diner was stuck in another time. Vinyl booths, checkerboard floor, peeling yellow wallpaper, and a radio on the counter softly playing a song Lydia couldn't place. Something from the 40s. A woman's voice, low and crooning. "I'll be seeing you, in all the old familiar places." Lydia stepped inside. The door swung shut behind her with a soft click. And the figure at the counter slowly turned to look at her. The man at the counter looked wrong. Not grotesque, not overly. But his skin was just too smooth, like rubber molded into the shape of a person. His mouth was fixed in a weary half-smile that didn't reach his glassy eyes. He wore a short-order cook's uniform, white but faded to cream, and a name tag that read, "E.D." The diner was quiet except for the low hum of the radio and the buzzing lights. Lydia moved cautiously, her boots squeaking against the checkered tile. Ed's smile widened just a little as she approached. "Coffee?" His voice was pleasant. Warm even. The kind of voice meant to disarm you. Lydia remembered Nathan's warning. Don't eat. Don't sit. Don't accept anything. She shook her head. No, thanks. Ed didn't blink. Not even a little cup? On the house. Real strong, warm you right up. She hesitated. Behind the counter, a glass pot sat half full on the warmer, its surface shimmering like oil. The smell was wrong. Not bitter or rich like coffee should be, but metallic, sweet, with an aftertaste her nose could taste before her mouth ever would. No, she said more firmly. Just passing through. Ed's smile twitched. Ain't we all? Lydia glanced around. There were menus on the tables, blank. Napkin dispensers filled with folded, yellowed paper. A slice of pie sat under a dusty glass dome near the register. It hadn't been touched in years. Mold ringed the crust like lace. She took a step backward. I should be going. Ed's voice followed her, low and syrup thick. You know she used to sit right there, in that booth by the window. Lydia froze. He kept talking. Hair all tangled, dress all wet. People would try to help her. Give her rides. He looked at Lydia now. Some never came back. Others came back different. Her heart thumped like a fist against her ribs. You one of them? She asked. Ed's smile never moved, but his eyes dimmed. I don't remember. Lydia backed up another step. Her hand touched the doorframe. She don't like when people run, Ed said. Makes her want to chase. I'm not running, Lydia said quietly. She's in your blood now. Ed murmured. You'll feel her when you sleep. Hear her in your own voice. You'll see her in the mirror. Lydia turned and pushed the door open. The bell jingled softly. Ed called after her one last time. But don't worry, sweetheart. She only takes what you don't love enough to keep. The words stuck in Lydia's mind like burrs. She only takes what you don't love enough to keep. The parking lot felt colder than before. The mist was thicker now, rolling over the cracked pavement in lazy curls. Her car sat alone under the flickering diner sign, red taillights glowing faintly through the fog. It felt like she'd been gone longer than a few minutes. Maybe hours. Nathan was still inside, his silhouette unmoved in the passenger seat. Lydia quickened her pace. The bottle of sanitizer still clutched tightly in her hand like a talisman. Her boots echoed sharply now, louder than they should have. Each step sounded like it was being answered by another, softer footsteps a few paces behind her, out of sync. She didn't turn around. She opened the car door and slid inside, shutting it quickly. Nathan looked at her. You shouldn't have gone in. I needed to, she said. There was someone in there. Ed. He knew things. The storm had tapered into. They pulled out onto the road again, the tires spitting wet gravel in their wake. For several minutes neither of them spoke. Just the sound of the rain and the low hum of the heater filled the cabin. Then Lydia said, She's changing. Getting stronger. Nathan nodded. You gave her shape. Every time you look, listen, speak to her, you give her more. Lydia gritted her teeth. Then what's left for me? If you're lucky? Nathan murmured. A shadow. If not, she rides forever. The words chilled her more than the wind ever could. She reached up to adjust the mirror, and froze. The girl was back. But different now. Older. No longer crouched, no longer childlike. Her features had sharpened into something closer to Lydia's. Same high cheekbones, same sloped eyebrows, same chin. She was becoming her. Lydia dropped the mirror back into place and fought the nausea rising in her throat. Nathan noticed. She's testing the shape. I want her out, Lydia said through clenched teeth. You can't force her, he said. You have to make her want to leave. Lydia looked at him. How? Nathan's voice was steady, but grim. You show her what it's like to be you. Lydia's grip tightened on the steering wheel. Her throat felt raw, scraped by every word Nathan had just said. "You want me to what? Open up to her?" she asked, her voice brittle. "Tell my life story to the thing crawling around behind me like a human puppet?" "You don't have to tell her anything," Nathan replied. "She already knows. That's what she feeds on, your regrets, your guilt, your weak points. But if you show her something stronger than fear, she'll recoil." "Stronger than fear," Lydia muttered. "Like what, exactly? My Spotify playlists and childhood hobbies?" Nathan didn't smile. "Like pain. Real pain. The kind she doesn't understand." Lydia's eyes burned as she looked at the road ahead. It was narrowing again, twisting into a corridor of ancient trees. Branches arched overhead like ribs. The headlights cast the world in gray and gold, but the shadows between the trees seemed to pulse with something deeper. Hungrier. "She wants to become you," Nathan said. "But only the parts she understands. She wants your surface. Your voice. Your face. Not the weight you carry." Lydia didn't answer. She was remembering things she'd locked away years ago. The voicemails she never returned. The father she didn't visit in the hospital until the end. The child she lost when she was 19. All of it pushed to the back, buried under layers of time and denial. And suddenly the car felt smaller, tighter. The air grew warmer, heavier. It carried the faint scent of rose water and antiseptic. A smell she hadn't known since the hospital room where she'd last seen her mother, sunken and silent. "She's pulling from me," Lydia whispered. "She's in you," Nathan said. "And she's using what you buried." A soft voice spoke from behind them. Not quite a child anymore. Not quite Lydia. Something in between. "You never wanted it. You were glad it was over." Lydia's hands trembled. Nathan didn't look back. "Don't answer her." Lydia's jaw clenched. "She's not wrong. Still, don't answer." The girl spoke again, and her voice sounded more like Lydia's now, eerily close. As if the vocal cords had been practiced. "You moved on fast. You forget easy. You're easy to replace." Lydia blinked hard, trying to keep her eyes on the road. But the tears came anyway. "Stop the car," Nathan said suddenly. "What?" "Now." She pulled to the shoulder, gravel crunching beneath the tires. The trees loomed around them like walls. Nathan opened his door. "Get out." Lydia stared at him. "Are you insane? You said not to stop." "She's too deep in now. You need space. You need distance." He stepped out into the mist. Lydia hesitated, then followed. The moment her boots hit the wet ground, she felt it, a release. A pressure easing, just slightly, like stepping out of a vice. Nathan stood beside her, staring at the car. The passenger door was still open, but the girl was in the driver's seat now, hands on the wheel, smiling at Lydia with her own face. Lydia stumbled back a step, the breath knocked from her as if someone had struck her in the chest. The girl sat perfectly still in the driver's seat, fingers curled around the wheel, knuckles pale, just like Lydia's had been. Her posture, her tilted head, the slight squint of her eyes as she watched through the windshield, it was all too perfect. Like a reflection in a mirror made by someone who didn't understand what a mirror was. She's wearing me," Lydia whispered. Nathan didn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on the thing in the car, face unreadable. The girl smiled wider, then lifted one hand and gave a little wave. Her fingers moved awkwardly, too slow, like a puppet mimicking a wave it had only seen once. "I don't understand," Lydia said. "She was just a shadow." She couldn't even sit up straight before. How is she driving now? Nathan exhaled slowly, the mist curling from his lips like smoke. "Because you gave her shape. Fear gave her bones. Pain gave her skin. And now she has a name. Lydia looked at him, shaken. My name. He nodded. She only ever needed you to say yes. You didn't say it aloud, but you said it every time you looked. Every time you listened. The girl in the driver's seat mouthed something. Lydia couldn't hear the words, but she knew what they were. I'm you now. Lydia turned to Nathan. How do I stop this? You can undo it, he said. But you can reject it. She's already taken me. Not yet, he said. She's only sitting in your place. You can still take it back. Lydia stared at the car, heart thudding. Her car. Her seat. Her identity, coiled now in the imitation sitting behind that wheel. Then what do I do? She asked. Nathan looked at her, voice firm. You remind her who you are. Not what she sees, not what you hide, but what she can't become. Lydia took a step forward. She doesn't know the real me. She's trying to forget it. Make you forget it too. But if you hold on, if you fight for it, she'll break. Lydia moved slowly toward the car. The girl's smile twitched. She cocked her head and tapped one finger against the window, just like Lydia had done once as a child, when she was waiting for her dad to unlock the car after school. That memory hit hard. Too hard. The girl blinked, once, slowly, and in her eyes, Lydia saw flickers of everything she'd ever wanted to leave behind: funerals, voicemail boxes with one new message, baby shoes she never took out of the box. She reached for the handle. Nathan whispered behind her, "Be ready to scream." Lydia's hand gripped the door handle, slick with condensation. The metal was ice cold, biting into her palm like something alive. Inside, the girl waited patiently. Her mouth curved in a counterfeit smile, her reflection hovering in the window like a smear of breath. Lydia could see herself in it, warped and thin. "I'm not you," Lydia whispered. The girl tilted her head again, imitating curiosity. Then, she reached out from the driver's seat and slowly pressed a hand to the inside of the glass, palm to palm with Lydia. Lydia froze. The handprint was identical to hers. Same creases. Same faint scar on the side of the thumb. Even the chipped black polish on the pinky nail matched perfectly. She pulled her hand away and stumbled back. Nathan stood several feet behind, unmoving. Watching. Waiting. Lydia turned her back on the girl and stared out into the woods, into the dark. She tried to anchor herself, tried to remember real things. Her favorite book. The crack in her kitchen floor tiles. The way her dog used to bark in his sleep. She doesn't know those things, Nathan said. She can copy your face, your sound, even your movements. But not the inner shape of you. Lydia turned, jaw clenched. Then that's where I fight. Without another word, she wrenched the door open. The girl looked up. The moment the seal broke, the smell hit Lydia, damp earth, mildew, and something else, ozone, like scorched air after lightning. The girl's smile faltered. "Get out," Lydia said. The girl blinked, then spoke. Her voice was perfect. A flawless mimic of Lydia's, layered with familiarity and something deeper, like a memory whispering back. "I don't think you want to be you anymore." Lydia reached into the glove compartment without looking away, pulled out the sanitizer again. She soaked a napkin and lit the tip with Nathan's lighter. He must have placed it there when she wasn't looking. The flame danced weakly, but bright enough to reflect in the girl's two dark eyes. "I remember the day I lost her," Lydia said. "I remember the sound the monitor made when it stopped. You don't. You can never know that." The girl hissed, low and guttural, the mask slipping. Lydia stepped forward, thrusting the flame toward the seat. The girl screamed. Not a sound of pain, but of rage. Of denial. And her face began to melt, not from fire, but from within. As though Lydia's words were peeling away the lie. The skin on the girl's face rippled, cracking in fine hairline fractures like porcelain under heat. Her eyes, still dark and too wide, began to swirl, as if the void inside them was folding back on itself. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, lips parting too far, stretching past what a human face should allow. But Lydia didn't flinch. She stepped closer. "This body isn't yours," she said, voice shaking but steady. "This pain isn't yours. This life, my life, you'll never be strong enough to carry it." The girl shrank back in the seat, twitching, shuddering. The hand on the steering wheel spasmed and fell away. The smile dropped, replaced by something else, something childlike. Lost. Fractured. And then... She spoke again. "Then give me something else." Lydia froze. The voice had changed. Still hers, but younger. Like a recording of herself from years ago, layered over the present. It wasn't just mimicry anymore, it was desperation. Nathan's voice echoed from outside. "She's bargaining. That means she's weakening." Lydia stared into the girl's face, now flickering like candlelight. Between each blink, it shifted, her mother's face. Then her father's. Then a child with blue ribbons. Then a faceless version of herself, mouth open, leaking shadows. The girl leaned forward, whispering now, breath thick with want. "Let me be someone no one remembers. Let me take something no one loves." Lydia's stomach turned. "You want my worst memory?" The girl nodded once. "A place to live." And suddenly, the air inside the car was thick with presence, not just hers. It was like 1,000 whispers murmuring beneath the surface, voices pressed between layers of glass. Every sorrow Lydia had buried. Every harsh word, every broken promise, every time she walked away when someone needed her, they were all here. "You can't survive off pain forever," Lydia said. "Not mine. Not anyone's." The girl's body twitched violently, her fingers scraping across the console as if trying to hold on. And then Lydia felt it. A pull. Like her own memories were unraveling. Slipping from her skin and falling into that thing across from her. Nathan's voice came sharp. "Lydia, choose. Give her nothing, or give her something that'll destroy her." Her hands trembled. Her heart hammered. And then Lydia spoke, not to Nathan, not to herself, but to the girl. "You want something I don't love?" She leaned in. "Then take this." The girl leaned closer, that broken grin returning, hopeful, expectant. Her hands gripped the seat again, fingers twitching in anticipation, like she could already taste what Lydia was about to give. Her dark eyes shimmered with hunger. Lydia steadied her breath, focusing on something deeper, something hidden beneath the surface of her thoughts. The one memory she hated most. The one she hadn't cried over. The one she'd locked in a mental box so tight even time couldn't loosen it. She closed her eyes. "I had a brother," she whispered. The girl's smile froze. Nathan stepped forward, silent now, eyes wide. "He was born 3 minutes before me," Lydia continued. "We were always together, until we weren't." The girl tilted her head slowly, like a hound catching a scent. "I was 15. We were walking home. He told me to wait while he ran back to grab his sketchbook from the park bench. I said I didn't care. That he was stupid for always forgetting things." Lydia opened her eyes, and they were wet, but unblinking. "He never came back." The girl twitched. "I waited. I waited too long. And when I went back, there was blood. A shoe. That's all." The air around them thickened. Even the trees seemed to lean in, listening. "I told myself for years it wasn't my fault. That it would have happened no matter what. But the truth is..." She leaned toward the girl, until their faces were inches apart. "I stopped caring before I ever lost him. And I've hated myself for it every single day." The girl shivered. Lydia saw her face fracture, again. lines forming across her cheeks like porcelain cracking under pressure. Her eyes widened, then blinked rapidly, confused. She wasn't expecting that. The grief. The weight. It was too much. The girl opened her mouth, but this time, no sound came out. Just a gasp. Hollow and trembling. And then her face folded, collapsing inward, as if imploding under the weight of the sorrow Lydia had thrust upon her. Lydia stepped back, voice firm now. You want something I don't love? Take that. Take the guilt. Take the numbness. But you'll never make it yours. The girl shrieked. The glass of the windshield cracked. The entire car shuddered. And in a burst of shadow and vapor, she vanished, pulled backward into the seams of the upholstery like smoke sucked into a vacuum. Gone. Lydia fell to her knees, gasping. Nathan stepped to her side, kneeling carefully. You gave her too much. No, Lydia whispered. I gave her something she could never digest. Nathan looked toward the car. The back seat was empty. No footprints. No handprints. Just silence. And rain. They sat in silence for a long time, crouched beside the still warm engine of the car, surrounded by trees that now felt less alive, less watchful. The storm had tapered into a misty drizzle, soft and cold, like the sky had decided to grieve in its own quiet way. Lydia stared at the passenger door. Her reflection blinked back at her from the glass, smudged, exhausted, hers. Just hers. No mimicry. No hollow echo grinning back. Nathan exhaled, the sound almost a sigh of relief. You did what I couldn't. Lydia didn't look at him. Her voice was low. I didn't fight her. I fed her poison. She chose the wrong part of you to take, he said. Lydia finally turned. She still exists, doesn't she? Nathan's eyes darkened. They always do. But now she'll sink. Drift. Maybe for years. Maybe longer. Until someone else opens the door. The thought made Lydia's stomach twist. Nathan stood slowly, brushing rain from his sleeves. He looked thinner than before, less solid. Like the tension that had held him together was gone, and now he was unraveling. Lydia narrowed her eyes. What happens to you now? He gave her a small, crooked smile. My part's over. She stood too cautious. You said she was riding you. She was. But I'd already faded long before you picked me up. He glanced toward the woods. I haven't had a home or a heartbeat in years. Lydia took a shaky breath. So what are you? A memory? A warning, he said. One you actually listened to. She frowned. But you used me. You knew what would happen. I didn't know, he said softly. But I hoped. Lydia shook her head. You could have fought harder. Nathan's eyes shimmered faintly in the fog. Or maybe I fought just enough to lead you to this point. He turned toward the woods, the mist curling around his boots like eager fingers. Wait, Lydia said. You don't have to go. He glanced back once. I was never really here, Lydia. I was just a shadow behind you. And then, in the blink of an eye, he was gone. No farewell. No sound. Just space where someone had stood. Lydia stood alone beside the car, the weight of silence like a blanket on her shoulders. She opened the door and slid into the driver's seat. It was warm, but no longer haunted. She rested her forehead against the wheel. Somewhere behind her, she imagined a voice whispering, You passed the test. But maybe it was just her own. The engine rumbled quietly beneath Lydia's fingertips, the familiar vibrations of her Civic offering something she hadn't felt in hours: control. She adjusted the seat, touched the steering wheel like it was an old friend, then glanced back at the empty back seat. It was just a seat now. No footprints. No shadows. No invisible breath crawling up her neck. But the air still felt changed. Lydia didn't start the car right away. She sat there for a long minute, the windshield wipers clicking on instinct, sweeping away a lazy curtain of mist. Her thoughts drifted like the fog outside, hovering in the spaces where fear had been only moments before. Nathan was gone. Really gone. And whatever he had been, ghost, fragment, or memory, he'd helped her. Guided her, even if it had been out of necessity or desperation. Lydia didn't hate him for it. She pitied him. She finally exhaled and shifted into drive. The tires rolled over damp gravel as she pulled back onto the road. The headlights stretched into the trees again, lighting up the same narrow strip of highway that had looped and twisted like a serpent all night. Only now, it felt straight. Like the road finally remembered where it led. Her phone, forgotten in the center console, chimed. Lydia blinked in surprise. She pulled it out, thumbed it awake. 1 bar. Enough for a ping. A faint GPS signal. A blinking blue dot now reappearing on the map. She zoomed out slowly. It showed her not far from a familiar marker, Hollow Creek, the town she should have passed hours ago. She almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she just whispered to the windshield, "You're letting me out." As if in answer, the mist began to thin. The trees opened up. Streetlights, real ones, appeared ahead like stars breaking through heavy cloud cover. She passed the wooden sign. "Welcome to Hollow Creek, EST 1904. Her chest ached, the tension unwinding in her ribcage like a string being pulled loose from a spool. She didn't relax? Not yet. But she allowed herself a few deep breaths. The car's heater kicked on, warm and humming. And for the first time in what felt like years, she felt alone. Properly, blessedly alone. But she didn't trust it, not fully. Not yet. Because somewhere inside her, a whisper lingered. She only takes what you don't love enough to keep. Hollow Creek looked exactly as Lydia remembered it. Quiet, unassuming. A town where nothing exciting ever happened. The gas stations were all closed, but the diner near the center of town had one light on inside, flickering like a heartbeat in a sleeping body. She did, and the mist, though thinner, still clung to the edges of the street, like it didn't want to leave her entirely. Lydia rolled down her window. Cold air rushed in. Fresh, grounded. Real. She let it hit her face, sting her cheeks, flood her lungs. "I'm awake now," she said aloud. No answer. No voice from the back seat. No breath behind her ear. Still, she checked the mirror. Twice. Her reflection was her own. But she couldn't shake the memory of the other face. The one that smiled too widely, mimicked too perfectly. That face lived somewhere behind her eyelids now. She would never fully be alone again. Not entirely. The phone in her lap buzzed once. A notification. Signal restored. She pulled into the parking lot of a shuttered hardware store, threw the car in park, and tapped open her call history. Missed calls. A few texts from coworkers wondering if she was okay. One from her sister. "Hey. Just checking in. Haven't heard from you." She stared at it. Typed. "I'm okay. Long drive. I'll explain soon." Then paused. She erased, "I'm okay." Typed instead. "I'm here. Send it." The phone felt heavier than before. Or maybe she was lighter. But even as she sat there, surrounded by street lights and empty storefronts, Lydia felt a shape move in her memory. A lingering echo, not of a face, but of a feeling. Cold. Hollow. Mimicking love like a mirror mimics light. It was gone. She was sure of that. But part of her would always feel watched now. Because the thing that rode in the back seat didn't just take your soul. It left a copy. Lydia sat in the car long after the message was sent, the phone dimming in her hand as it settled into silence. She stared at her reflection in the black screen, uncertain. She looked the same. But something in her was different now. Like her bones remembered what it felt like to carry someone else, something else. A passenger that never belonged. The heater hummed, and the scent of the hand sanitizer still clung faintly to the air. She let the memories play out quietly in her mind. The wet footprints, the tapping, the little voice calling her name like it had always known her. She didn't want to forget. Not because it was trauma, but because forgetting would mean it could happen again. That she'd lose the clarity she'd earned. She opened her glove box, pulled out a weathered receipt, and began to write with a cheap pen she'd wedged into the side compartment. Rules of the road. Don't stop for shadows. If you hear your name, keep driving. Don't look in the mirror unless you have to. Fire doesn't burn her, but it reminds her. You only lose what you never fought to keep. Guilt is fuel. Grief is bait. Don't feed her. You'll know it's her when you start forgetting yourself. The back seat is never empty. She stared at the last line for a long time. Then folded the paper and slid it behind the sun visor, where no one else would ever see it, unless they needed to. A quiet moment passed. Then her phone buzzed again. Sister, 1:34 a.m. Glad you're okay. Come stay with us if you need to. Spare rooms open. Lydia smiled faintly. Typed. Might do that. Could use some real sleep. Before pulling back onto the road, she glanced once more at the back seat. Empty. For now. But she didn't reach for the mirror. Didn't say another word. She just turned up the music, something warm, something loud, and let the road stretch ahead of her like a lifeline through the night. As she drove, headlights flickering over curves and familiar signs, a strange peace settled over her. Not because she was safe, but because she was ready. And this time, if anything else ever climbed into her car, it would find a driver who knew how to fight. By the time Lydia reached the highway on-ramp, the fog had lifted completely. The stars were out, blinking faintly between long strips of clouds, and the hum of her tires over clean asphalt was almost soothing. She hadn't realized how tightly her muscles had been coiled until now. The further she got from that stretch of haunted road, the more her body remembered how to breathe. Still, she didn't relax. The rearview mirror remained untouched, slightly tilted down, its surface catching only the faint shimmer of the dashboard lights. She didn't need to see the back seat to know it was empty. That wasn't the point anymore. The point was control. And she wasn't giving any of it back. Up ahead, a roadside motel glowed in the dark like a beacon, a squat building with flickering signage, sagging roof, and a parking lot half filled with pickups and tired travelers. Nothing fancy. But it felt grounded. Lydia pulled in and parked near a vending machine buzzing with fluorescent light. Her phone showed 1:53 a.m. She sat in the car a moment longer. Checked her hands. They were steady now. She reached for the door handle and paused, her eyes drifting once more to the passenger seat. A memory flashed. Nathan still framed beside her, the way his voice had faded like a song slipping underwater. He wasn't real. Or maybe he was, in his own way. Some echo left behind, just like the girl had been. Either way, he was gone. And she was not. Inside the motel lobby, a young woman sat behind a glass window, sipping from a thermos. She looked up, blinked a few times, and smiled sleepily. Rough night? You could say that, Lydia said. The woman slid a notepad toward her. Name and license plate? Lydia hesitated. She hadn't said her name out loud since it all happened. Not to anyone. But she wrote it. Lydia Holt. She handed it back. Room key in hand, she stepped outside and walked the short distance to room 106. The lock clicked open without protest. The room smelled like old pine cleaner and polyester, but it felt real. Solid. She locked the door behind her. Checked the bathroom. Peeked beneath the bed. Then, at last, she turned and looked in the full-length mirror near the closet. Only her. tired, gaunt. But her. She whispered. I'm still here. And this time, no voice answered back. Lydia stood in front of the mirror longer than she meant to. Not admiring herself, there wasn't much to admire. Dark circles under her eyes. Hair matted slightly from rain and tension. Lips pale, shoulders hunched. She looked like someone who had barely made it through something horrible. But that wasn't the point. The point was, her reflection wasn't smiling on its own. Her eyes weren't black. She reached out and touched the surface of the mirror lightly with her fingertips. It was cool. Smooth. It did exactly what it was supposed to do, reflect, not pretend. Then she turned away and sat on the edge of the bed. The motel was quiet. No thumping footsteps above her. No murmured conversations bleeding through thin walls. Just the occasional buzz of the ancient air conditioner kicking on and off. Lydia pulled off her boots, peeled off her damp socks, and winced at the bruises she hadn't noticed before. Her legs ached. Her back was stiff. But it was the ache in her chest that she focused on now, the grief, the guilt, the sorrow she had fed to the thing in the back seat. She realized something then. The girl hadn't fed on the pain. She'd wanted to understand it. To wear it like skin. To understand why humans could hurt and still keep going. But she couldn't. It was too much. Too real. Too human. Lydia pulled back the stiff motel comforter and slid between the sheets, still in her jeans and sweater. The warmth didn't come easily, but when it did, it settled deep in her bones. She stared at the ceiling. Somewhere out there, someone else would see her again, the girl. Maybe on another road. Maybe in another form. But they wouldn't see Lydia. Because Lydia had survived. More than that, she had kept something that couldn't be taken. Her name. Her grief. Her memory. The clock on the nightstand blinked 2:17 a.m. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, she slept without dreaming. When Lydia woke, sunlight was pouring in through the sheer curtains, bright and golden, the kind that doesn't wait politely but spills into the room like it owns the place. Her eyes cracked open slowly. Her first thought wasn't relief, or hunger, or even where she was. It was, what's behind me? Her breath caught for a moment. Then she remembered. Nothing. She sat up. The motel room looked mundane. Slightly too warm, air conditioner rattling, a dead moth pressed into the windowsill. No wet footprints. No shadows. No mirrors whispering her name. She rose and padded barefoot to the window, drawing the curtain aside. Cars passed on the nearby highway, just a handful. A couple on a motorcycle, a delivery truck, an elderly man in a blue sedan. No one stood by the side of the road. No one waved. Just life. Moving on. She dressed in silence, brushing knots from her hair with her fingers. Everything she owned was still in the car. She'd left it unlocked, and in any other town, she might have worried about that. Not today. She checked out at the desk with a nod and a mumbled thank you, then stepped back into the parking lot's morning warmth. Her Civic was right where she'd left it. It looked ordinary. Almost insultingly so. She slid behind the wheel, the seat cool against her back, and turned the key. The engine started without a sound out of place. No music played. No voices whispered. She opened the glove box out of instinct. The paper she'd written, Rules of the Road, was still folded behind the visor. Lydia pulled it out and reread it. Every word felt truer now than when she wrote it. She added a 9th line. 9. If you survive, you owe the road a warning. She folded the paper neatly and slid it into a plastic sleeve she found under the passenger seat, a backup insurance slip, and tucked it into her glove box, front and center. Maybe someone else would find it someday. And maybe they'd know what to do. As she pulled out of the parking lot, merging onto the road that led west toward her sister's place, Lydia rolled the window down. Wind tousled her hair. She was driving. Not fleeing. Not trapped. Driving. Alone. But for the first time in a long time, not haunted. The drive west was different. The road curved like it always had, but it no longer seemed to fold in on itself. The trees no longer pressed inward. The world outside had space now, room to breathe. Lydia felt it in the way the sunlight dappled through the branches. In how the yellow lines on the asphalt didn't disappear the second she looked away. She didn't use her phone for directions. She didn't need to. The route was etched in her muscle memory. Back roads and county lines she hadn't driven since before her mother passed, since before everything. And it felt right. The farther she got from the empty stretch of Route 19, the more the tension ebbed from her shoulders. But not all of it. Some things, she'd learned, stay. Not like hauntings. More like fingerprints. She glanced at the glove box once or twice, wondering if she should have left the note somewhere someone else might find it sooner. A gas station. A truck stop. That old diner with the crooked sign. But then again, maybe fate put the road where it wanted. And if someone else ended up there, it would mean they, too, had already been chosen. She couldn't save them. But she could warn them. A road sign passed. Elmont, 42 miles. Her sister lived 10 miles past that. Just off a gravel road with a red mailbox, a porch swing, and a stubborn rescue dog that never liked Lydia's perfume. Lydia wondered if the dog would still bark when she pulled up. She hoped so. Anything familiar would be welcome now. The phone buzzed softly on the console. She tapped the screen. Sister, 10:31 a.m. Making cinnamon rolls. You better not bail. Lydia smiled despite herself. She typed. Still coming. Save me one with the icing running off the edge. A moment later. 2 if I look tired. 3 dots appeared then. You can have the whole tray. You do sound tired. And she was. But not just from lack of sleep. Lydia had lived a lifetime in that car. And now, with each mile behind her, she was learning how to carry it. Not to bury it. Not to forget it. But to live with it. And that, she thought, was the difference between being a survivor and becoming another ghost in the back seat. The scent hit her before she even pulled into the gravel driveway. Warm cinnamon, toasted sugar, and that unmistakable scent of something fresh from a worn oven. Her sister always baked with the windows open, even in the dead of winter. The tires crunched over gravel, and the dog, Charlie, an aging pit mix with a suspicious attitude, was already on the porch, ears perked. His hackles didn't rise, but he didn't wag either. He just watched. Judging. You still don't trust me, Lydia muttered, stepping out of the car with a stretch. Charlie gave a single huff. Then, after a long moment, he padded forward and pressed his snout into her knee. A slow, heavy tail wagged once. Twice. Lydia smiled. Good enough. Her sister met her at the screen door, apron dusted with flour, a smear of icing on her wrist. You look like hell, she said softly, but there was no malice in it. Feel like I fought it and came out the other side with a limp, Lydia said. They embraced, the kind of hug that lingers just a second longer than it needs to, meant for grounding, not just greeting. Inside, the kitchen looked like every memory Lydia still carried. Crooked magnets on the fridge. A dish towel with a fading pumpkin stitched into it, even though it wasn't anywhere near fall. A chipped mug with the word, meh, printed on it in Comic Sans. She sank into the chair near the window and inhaled. I miss this. You miss me, her sister teased, pulling the tray of rolls from the oven. This kitchen's still a wreck. Lydia smiled. Both can be true. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sugar and dough softening the edge of Lydia's frayed nerves. Then her sister asked, What happened out there? Lydia stared at the cinnamon roll in her hands for a long time before she spoke. There was a girl, she said. Not a real girl. Not anymore. She was hollow. Like a memory that wanted to live inside someone else. Her sister didn't interrupt. Just listened. She got in my car. But not all at once. She climbed in, piece by piece. Voice. Face. Regret. Pain. She wore it like a mask, but it didn't fit right. Her sister was silent for a moment. Then, you got her out? Lydia nodded. I gave her something she couldn't use. Her sister's eyes softened. And she left? No, Lydia said quietly. She broke. They didn't talk for a while after that. Outside, wind swept through the trees, and somewhere far off, Lydia swore she heard the faint echo of laughter. Not haunting. Not cruel. Just distant. The afternoon passed gently, as if the world had agreed to give Lydia a few precious hours of stillness. No strange shadows moved along the kitchen tiles. No disembodied voices whispered her name. There was only the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the clink of coffee mugs, and the murmuring of two women relearning each other. Lydia and her sister sat on the back porch as the sun dipped low, casting orange and rose-gold light across the yard. Charlie lay at their feet, finally content enough to sleep, his breathing steady and rhythmic. I know you don't want to tell me everything, her sister said, wrapping her hands around a chipped mug, but I can see it in your face. Something followed you. Lydia nodded. Not just followed. It rode with me. Her sister's eyes tightened. Like a ghost? No. Lydia stared at the trees. Like something that used to be human. That forgot how. It needed a shape. It tried to take mine. And you let it? I almost did. She sipped her coffee. But she didn't understand grief. Not really. She could wear it, but she couldn't carry it. Her sister watched her. That's what saved you. Lydia hesitated. I think it was the truth. The part one hated most. She thought if I didn't love it, I wouldn't fight for it. Her sister set down her mug. But you did. Lydia nodded. Because even the parts we hate make us who we are. She couldn't become me because she didn't understand what it cost to be me. The wind picked up then, a soft gust that rattled the leaves and swept through the porch screens. Lydia felt it brush against her skin, and for a fleeting second, her muscles tensed, remembering a different kind of presence. But this was just wind. Air and light and breath. She let it pass. Her sister reached out and took Lydia's hand. You can stay as long as you want. Lydia looked down at their joined fingers. Her sister's skin was warm. Solid. I won't stay forever, she said gently. But I need a little more time. Her sister squeezed once, then let go. The spare room's yours. Sheets are clean. Door locks from the inside. That night, as Lydia lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she thought about the road. About Nathan. About the face that tried to be hers. And about the next person who might see her standing on the side of Route 19, arm raised, thumb out. She hoped they wouldn't stop. But if they did, she hoped they were ready. The days passed gently, each one peeling away the residue of fear like old wallpaper. Lydia spent them helping her sister around the house, walking Charlie along wooded paths, and sleeping, really sleeping, for the first time in months. The nightmares didn't come. The voice didn't return. But the memory lingered, like a song that still plays faintly long after the music has stopped. She didn't talk about it much. But she felt it in her hands when she drove into town, or when she glanced at her reflection in windows and caught herself flinching. And she noticed things. Little things. A man in the grocery store talking to himself while looking at a row of empty soup cans. A little girl on a swing in the park, humming a song Lydia swore she'd heard in a fog-drenched diner. A rearview mirror in a car at the gas station, tilted down, untouched. The signs weren't loud, but they were familiar, and it made her wonder. Was it over? Or was it just waiting? One afternoon, about a week after arriving, Lydia pulled into the mechanic's shop on the edge of Elmont. Her Civic had developed a low, metallic rattle, likely nothing, but it was as good an excuse as any to keep her mind busy. She waited in the lobby, sipping burnt coffee and flipping through a dog-eared magazine, until the receptionist called her name. "Car's good to go. Nothing serious. Just a loose panel near the wheel well. We tightened it up." Lydia nodded, but her eyes drifted toward the man walking across the parking lot. He looked wrong. He moved like he wasn't sure how arms worked. His gait too smooth. Too slow. As if he were mimicking how humans should walk. He approached a silver sedan, opened the door, and sat, still as stone. Then slowly, methodically, adjusted the rearview mirror. His hand lingered there. Too long. Lydia still. The stars above were scattered like shards of frost across the sky, and the air carried the scent of earth and pine. Charlie lay curled beside her chair, snoring softly. The house lights behind her glowed warm through the screen door. Comforting. Anchoring. But Lydia's eyes were fixed on the road beyond the tree line. The same road that connected Elmont to Hollow Creek. The same stretch she'd driven weeks ago, not knowing what she was letting in. What was waiting to let her in? She held a steaming mug between her palms. Not coffee, just peppermint tea, but the warmth gave her something to grip. Something real. Her thoughts kept returning to the man at the mechanic's. How still he'd sat. How he'd stared into that mirror. How long she'd done the same. Because the truth was, she had wanted to see something in her reflection. Not herself. Not exactly. She had wanted proof. That someone, or something, understood what she carried. That she wasn't alone in her grief. That's what the girl had exploited. And Lydia had let her in. Not with a word. Not with a nod. But with need. And that scared her more than any shadow. She set the mug down on the porch rail and pulled the folded note from her jacket pocket. The same page she tucked into the glove box, now creased at the corners, ink faded slightly from her handling it so often. Rules of the road. She stared at the final line she'd added. 9. If you survive, you owe the road a warning. It echoed now, louder than when she wrote it. Because someone else had already picked up the girl's scent. Or maybe something like her. Maybe not the same face. Maybe not even the same voice. But the road wasn't done. And Lydia had never been the only passenger. She reached for the pen tucked behind her ear. Unfolded the paper slowly. And wrote. 10. If you see yourself in someone else, ask who's driving. In the days that followed, Lydia began to notice mirrors more than ever. Not just the rear view. All of them. In bathrooms. In shop windows. On the surface of still water when she walked past the creek. She didn't see the girl. Not anymore. But she'd catch things, a delay in her reflection's movement, a blink out of rhythm, a shadow on her face that didn't belong to the light around her. And always, just beneath the surface of the glass, there was a pull. Not supernatural. Emotional. It was as if the mirror asked, "Is this who you want to be?" Sometimes, she'd stare back and say nothing. Other times, she'd nod. And on one occasion, in a department store dressing room with fluorescent lights buzzing above and a cracked floor tile underfoot, she whispered to her own reflection. "Not anymore." And the reflection smiled. Genuinely. It was working, slowly, day by day. But healing, she found, wasn't a straight line. Sometimes it was a loop. She had nightmares still, though rare. Once, she dreamed of driving at night again, fog curling in through the dashboard vents. In the dream, she was alone, except her reflection in the mirror was turned away from the road. Head tilted. watching her. When she asked, "Who's driving?" the mirror version simply smiled and said, "No one." She woke with her sheets tangled around her legs and the faint scent of damp earth in her nose. But the mirror beside her bed showed only one Lydia. Eyes tired, yes, but still hers. One evening, while getting gas on her way back from the grocery store, Lydia saw a woman, mid-30s, dark hair, glasses, pacing near her car with a child in the back seat. The kid looked wrong. Not monstrous, not unnatural. Just off. Too still. Too focused. The woman didn't seem to notice. Lydia approached slowly, heart pounding. "Excuse me," she said. The woman turned, startled. "Yes?" Lydia smiled gently. "Your rear tire's low. I noticed it from the pump." The woman blinked, looked back at her car. "Oh, thank you?" Lydia didn't say more. She didn't have to. But she watched, just long enough to see the woman open the back door. And the child blinked, twice, fast, like waking up from a trance. "Mom?" the girl asked. "Are we going soon?" Her mother smiled. "Right now, baby." Lydia returned to her car, her heart still thudding. The road didn't belong to any of them. But now she knew its tricks. And she would never drive blind again. Weeks passed. Lydia stayed. She hadn't planned to, not for this long. But each time she thought about packing up and leaving her sister's quiet farmhouse, she hesitated. Something always held her back. Sometimes it was Charlie's grumbling bark in the morning. Other times it was the silence, the kind she didn't find anywhere else. A silence that didn't watch her. She took up little tasks around town. Helped at the thrift store. Drove her niece to a school recital. Painted the shed behind the house. Ordinary things. Necessary things. Because the ordinary was what the road tried to steal from you. She was reclaiming it. One afternoon, while digging through a box of old books at a local rummage sale, she found something that stopped her breath short. A battered, leather-bound journal. On the inside front cover, written in neat block letters. Property of N.R. Nathan. Her fingers trembled slightly as she flipped the first few pages. There were no ghost stories. No confessions. Just short notes. Observations. Like, "The first time I saw her, she looked like my sister. That wasn't fair. Some days I think she's sorry. Other days I think she's only pretending to be something she forgot how to be. If I disappear, I hope it's clean. Quiet. Not a scream, just a door shutting." And then a list like her own. Things to remember when you start to forget. Mirrors lie. Grief is louder in the silence. Pain doesn't mean possession. Don't drive tired. She's not a passenger. She's a thief. Lydia sat down on the curb and read the rest cover to cover. It wasn't long. Maybe 20 pages, all told. Most of it was repetitive. Fragments. Phrases that clearly meant something only to him. But she understood. Because she had those too now. She bought the journal for 50 cents, though she would have paid $50. The woman running the sale had no idea where it came from. Just something left in a donation box. Lydia took it home, set it beside her bed, and opened her own notebook. She added a new page. Rules for the living. Talk to people. Look in the mirror, but only when you're ready. Know what you love. Don't leave your seat empty too long. Never trust silence that feels familiar. She paused. Then added, 6. If she knocks again, let her knock. That night, a storm rolled in. The kind that announced itself with a low growl across the horizon before the rain ever touched the ground. Lightning cracked through the sky, briefly illuminating the distant silhouette of trees bending with the wind like supplicants bowing to something unseen. Lydia lay awake, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan and the creaks of the house settling around her. The window panes rattled. The shadows on her walls shifted with every flicker of lightning. But none of it scared her. Not anymore. What frightened her now was familiarity. The idea that something could wear the shape of comfort, could wear her, and she'd never notice until it was too late. So when she heard the soft knock at the front door around 2:17 a.m., she didn't panic. She sat up slowly, heart beating steady. Charlie didn't stir. The hallway was dark as she padded toward the entryway, her bare feet quiet on the wood floors. The wind howled outside, branches tapping the siding, whispering like ghosts trading secrets. She reached the door but didn't open it. Didn't even touch the knob. She just stood there, waiting, listening. Another knock. Soft, polite, like a child taught not to disturb, but hoping to be let in all the same. Lydia placed her palm against the wood. It was cold. She leaned in slightly, just enough to let her voice carry. I know who you are. Silence. I know what you want. The wind hissed through the porch screen. And I'm not yours. A long pause. Then, a laugh. Faint. Feminine. Not cruel. Sad. The sound drifted off the porch like fog slipping off a pond. When Lydia finally opened the door, she had to know it was empty. Just the screen door bumping gently in the wind. But on the porch railing, drawn in a thin line of condensation, was a single word. Remember. She stared at it until the rain washed it away. And when she turned back inside, locking the door tight behind her, she smiled. Because she would. She always would. The next morning, everything was soaked. Rainwater dripped from the gutters in fat beads, splattering against the porch steps like slow applause. The trees shimmered, every branch weighed down by the storm's aftermath. And in the silence that followed, post-rain hush, the kind that presses against your skin like cool cloth, Lydia walked barefoot into the wet yard. The gravel bit at her soles, but she welcomed it. Pain meant presence. She didn't mention the knock to her sister. Not because she was hiding it, but because some things didn't need words. Her sister watched her more carefully now, but never pressed. Lydia appreciated that. Instead, she poured herself a cup of coffee, took it out to the porch, and sat exactly where the word had been drawn. Remember. She remembered. Everything. The girl's voice. Nathan's cracked silhouette. The way the car had felt heavier with every mile. The way she'd almost believed she deserved to disappear. She sipped her coffee and listened as a bird chirped tentatively from the fence. It was like the world was testing itself, asking if it was safe to be normal again. I think it is, she whispered. Later, she drove into town. Not for groceries or errands, just to drive. Just to feel the car under her hands and know, truly know, that she was the one behind the wheel. She passed the bus stop by the laundromat. Someone stood there. Alone. Soaked to the bone. A child, maybe 10. No bag. No coat. Just standing. Waiting. Lydia slowed. Her grip on the wheel tightened, heart clenching once before memory intervened. She rolled down the passenger side window. The figure looked up. It was a boy. Wide-eyed. Real. Hey, she called. You okay? He nodded slowly, shivering. Bus never came. You need a ride? He hesitated. Then nodded again. Lydia's hand hovered over the lock button. She looked at him closely, into his eyes. They were just eyes. Not voids. Not mirrors. Just a kid, cold and lost in a town that didn't have many buses. She unlocked the door. Front seat, she said. He climbed in without a word, water dripping from his sleeves. Lydia reached for a towel she kept in the back now, always, and handed it to him. Thanks, he mumbled. She drove. The road opened before them, and in the mirror, she saw only her reflection. Watching. Steady. Present. Driving. The boy's name was Micah. He said it quietly, almost like he was unsure he was allowed to offer it. Lydia didn't push. Just nodded and kept her hands steady on the wheel. He gave her an address tucked in the older part of town, near the water tower, past the bakery with the broken neon, "Eat" sign that never stopped flickering. They drove in silence for a while, the kind that didn't press down or demand anything. Eventually, Lydia spoke. "You were out there for a while, huh?" Micah nodded. "Bus was late. I think the driver forgot today. You tell your folks?" He shrugged. "I think they forgot too." There was no accusation in his voice. Just fact. Lydia understood that tone all too well. "You ever walk it?" "Yeah. But it's long. My feet hurt." Lydia nodded again, resisting the urge to ask more. Some silences didn't want to be filled. Some gaps were better left until someone else offered the bridge. When they pulled up to the small brick house, he turned to her and said, "You didn't look away." "What?" "In the car," he said. "Most people don't look at me when I talk." That hit harder than she expected. Because once, not long ago, Lydia hadn't looked either. She'd been driving in the dark, ignoring the voice behind her, too afraid to face what might be there. That moment, that lesson, lived in her now. "You looked real to me," she said. Micah smiled faintly. It wasn't sad. It wasn't forced. Just grateful. He opened the door. "Thanks," he said, "for not pretending I wasn't there." Then he was gone, slipping through the front gate and onto the porch, disappearing behind a screen door that creaked open like it hadn't been used in days. Lydia sat for a moment longer, watching the empty space he'd left. Then she reached into the glove box, pulled out the list, rules of the road, and added another line beneath the others. 11. Look at them. The living. The almost lost. They need to be seen. She folded it again, pressed it flat, and returned it to its place. The car started without hesitation. As she backed out of the driveway, she didn't check the mirror. She didn't need to. She knew who was driving now. And more importantly, she knew who wasn't. By the time Lydia reached the edge of town again, the sky had shifted, no longer gray and threatening but touched by gold, the kind that made windows shine and tree branches glow like stained glass. The day was easing toward dusk, and the world felt tender, like something precious that hadn't yet realized it had survived. She took the long road back. Not because she had to, but because she could. Because she chose to. As the engine hummed beneath her and the tires whispered along the pavement, she reached up and tilted the rearview mirror just slightly. It reflected the back seat. Empty. Still. But no longer threatening. She left it there. Let it watch her. Let it know she was watching back. She thought again of the boy, Micah, and how his words had stirred something in her. Something that hadn't had a name until now. It wasn't just about surviving. It was about witnessing. Not just the things that scared you, but the things you'd lost. The people you never looked at long enough. The parts of yourself you once turned away from. She slowed as she passed a familiar bend in the road, one that curved inward too tightly, as if built for something other than cars. The trees there still leaned in slightly, and the mist pooled in shallow dips between the roots. The place smelled like pine and memory. She knew this stretch. It had been hers once. She stopped the car. No reason. Just instinct. She stepped out, gravel crunching underfoot. For a moment, she stood at the shoulder, staring at the space where the girl had first stood, arm out, thumb raised, had tilted too far to the left. There was no one there now. Just the sound of wind. And the distant hum of something farther off, a highway, maybe. Or another traveler passing through, never knowing what this place had once held. Lydia reached into her jacket pocket, and pulled out the old notebook, the one that had belonged to Nathan. She flipped to the inside cover. Then she bent down, tucked it under a flat rock at the base of a gnarled tree, and whispered, "Your turn." She didn't mean it for anyone in particular. But she meant it. Because stories don't end on empty roads. They wait. And sometimes, the best thing you can leave behind is a warning. Lydia stood for a long moment at the base of that tree, the wind tousling her hair and lifting the corners of her jacket. She could still feel the warmth of the sun on her back, but it was fading. Dusk had begun its slow descent, and the woods were darker now. She turned back to the car. Its headlights were still on, casting pale beams into the mist curling around the edges of the road. The Civic waited like it always had, humble, steady. And Lydia realized something else then. She'd never named it. People named boats, guitars, pets, but not cars. Not always. But maybe now it deserved one. After everything they'd been through together. She looked at the dull silver paint, the cracked hubcap, the dent above the left fender. "Maybe Grace," she said aloud. "You got me home." A whisper of wind tugged at her collar, and she smiled faintly. Grace it was. She climbed back into the driver's seat, shut the door, and gave the mirror one last look. Still just her. No mimicry. No ghost. No passenger. As she merged back onto the road and let Grace ease into a steady cruise, she felt something like closure settle into her spine. And yet, she couldn't stop thinking about the others. People like Nathan. People like her. People who never even realized they were being hollowed out until it was too late. And people who might see someone standing on the side of a road someday, alone, dripping wet, thumb out, a smile that never quite fit. So she drove. And drove. And when she came across an old bulletin board near a gas station just off Highway 54, she pulled over. Taped to it were flyers for lost pets, guitar lessons, a summer fair long expired. She reached into her glove box and pulled out a copy of her list, one she'd rewritten on sturdier paper, laminated in clear tape. She pinned it to the corner. "Rules of the road. Read before you stop." Below the list, she scrawled in thick black ink, "If you think it's just a child, it's already too late." She stepped back, looked at the board one more time, and whispered, "Good luck." Because maybe that was all she could offer. Lydia drove through the night. She didn't need to. She wasn't on any deadline. Her sister would welcome her back with warm leftovers and sleepy conversation. But something inside her buzzed with a low, insistent current, like unfinished business humming under her skin. Grace moved steadily beneath her, headlights slicing through long corridors of empty country road. The trees that lined the edges no longer loomed. They bowed, as if in recognition. The radio played low static, station drifted out of range, but she didn't change it. The white noise felt right. She passed gas stations with dim, flickering signs. Farmhouses sunk in moonlight. Roadkill no one had moved. And all the while, she watched the rearview mirror not for ghosts, but for herself. She was there. Fully. And for once, her face didn't look like it wanted to disappear. She didn't notice how far she'd driven until a sign appeared up ahead. Hollow Creek, 9 miles. Her fingers twitched against the wheel. She hadn't meant to come back. Not really. But the car knew. The road knew. And deep down, so did she. She slowed. Turned down the narrow frontage road that paralleled Route 19. The air grew cooler. Heavier. But not with dread. With memory. She pulled off into a small gravel turnout, the same one where she'd first seen the girl. The rain had long since dried. The sky overhead was painted in navy and ink, stars scattered with Q. The woman turned with a start, hands clenched around the strap of her bag. "Are you okay?" Lydia asked, no fear in her voice. The woman blinked. I think I missed my bus. Lydia smiled gently. There are better roads, she said. Ones that don't eat pieces of you. The woman didn't understand, but she paused. And sometimes, Lydia thought, that was enough. Just one person choosing not to take the ride. The woman stood there, caught between instinct and uncertainty, her fingers twitching on the strap of her bag. Lydia didn't approach. Didn't pressure. She just waited, quiet and steady, like the road itself had reversed roles and was now hers to offer or deny. Finally, the woman spoke. You look familiar. Lydia tilted her head. Maybe. Or maybe you've just been here before. The woman gave a slow, nervous laugh. I don't think I've ever been down this road. Not on foot. Most people aren't, Lydia said. Silence settled between them again, but this time it wasn't oppressive. It was fragile, full of weight. Lydia took a step closer, careful not to cross the invisible boundary between comfort and intrusion. Do you feel like something's following you? The woman's face twitched. Not a big reaction. Just a flicker. A twitch of the eye. A slight parting of the lips. Sometimes, she admitted. But I can't explain it. You don't have to. The woman's eyes lifted to Lydia's. I had this dream, she said. Or maybe it wasn't. I was driving. But I wasn't me. I was watching from the passenger seat. And the driver looked like me. But wasn't. And when I tried to speak, she just smiled and said I was lucky to be forgotten. Lydia's chest tightened. She knew that smile. She'd worn it once too. I think, Lydia said, choosing her words with care, you already walked too close to something that wanted to wear you. The woman's hands clutched the strap tighter. What do I do? She asked. Lydia reached into her coat, pulled out a folded page. One she'd copied from the original in her glove box. A clean list. Clear handwriting. No smudges. Start here, Lydia said. The woman took it hesitantly. Her eyes scanned the first few lines, then widened slightly. She looked back up. This is real? Lydia nodded. The road takes what you forget to protect. Start remembering. The woman held the paper like a shield. Lydia smiled gently. Go home. And this time, the woman listened. She turned. Walked the other way. Back the way she came. Lydia watched her until the trees swallowed her up. The road groaned softly beneath her feet. A breath. A reminder. But she wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Because now, she was the one standing between the road and someone else. And the road didn't like that. Good. Let it remember her too. The mist gathered as Lydia stood there, alone again, the woman long gone down the curve of the road. It coiled at her ankles like the ghost of an old habit, tugging lightly at her jeans as if trying to test her footing, test her resolve. She didn't move. Didn't flinch. Let the air thicken around her. The road had eyes, she knew that now. Not the kind you could see, but the kind that watched, that waited. The kind that studied your breath, your steps, your doubt. But it wasn't omnipotent. It wasn't all-powerful. It just fed on permission. That was the part no one warned you about. You didn't have to say yes aloud. You just had to forget to say no. And Lydia had remembered. Every mile. Every mirror. Every almost moment of surrender. She had remembered herself. She stepped off the road and back toward Grace. The gravel crunched beneath her boots like quiet applause. She opened the door, slid into the driver's seat, and sat for a moment with the engine off. Listening. Behind her, the rearview mirror reflected the back seat. Empty. But still. Present. She didn't reach to tilt it away this time. She looked right into it. You're not getting back in, she whispered. Then she started the car. The engine purred, soft and steady. Reliable. Grace. She pulled back onto the frontage road and merged west, driving slow at first, letting the mist recede behind her in the mirror, letting the trees thin into familiar shapes, letting her breath even out. She didn't have a destination yet, but she wasn't running. She was seeding, leaving breadcrumbs, small warnings, glimpses, notes tacked to corkboards and tucked into glove compartments. A trail of truths for the next person who felt a little too hollow at the wrong mile marker. She wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Because if the road wanted more stories, if it wanted more passengers, then she'd be there ahead of it. A sentry in a silver Civic, armed with nothing but memory and a list. The next town Lydia stopped in was small, so small it didn't even show up on some maps. Just a scattering of buildings along a curve in the road. A diner with a crooked sign that read Mel's, a boarded-up theater with ivy creeping over the marquee, and a motel called Sleepy Pines with 6 rooms and a soda machine that still carried glass bottles. It felt paused, like a place waiting for time to remember it. Lydia parked behind the diner, killed the engine, and sat still for a moment. She wasn't here by accident. The road had whispered something in the rhythm of the tires. It wasn't a voice. Not exactly. Just a knowing. An instinct that settled behind her ribs and said, "Here. This is one of the places she's walked through." Inside the diner, the lights buzzed softly overhead. A few patrons nursed cups of coffee, eyes heavy and quiet. A teenage waitress with a ponytail and chipped blue nails wiped down the counter, humming something just slightly off-tune. Lydia took a booth near the back. When the waitress came over, Lydia ordered a coffee and a slice of whatever pie was freshest. "Apple crumble," the girl said, scratching at her wrist absently. "We only make it on Thursdays." "You're lucky." Lydia smiled faintly. "I seem to be these days." She watched the room as she sipped her coffee. Watched how everyone avoided the window seats. Watched how a man in a tan coat stirred his spoon in an empty cup for nearly 10 minutes, eyes locked on nothing. Something wasn't right here. But not dangerous. Just disturbed. Like the water in a still pond after someone's touched the center. She finished her pie slowly. Let the sugar and cinnamon ground her. Let the normalcy soak in, like armor. Then she left a tip beneath her cup and stepped outside. On the notice board by the entrance, a fading cork rectangle warped by weather, she pinned another copy of her list. Rules of the road. She added one more line in black pen. 12. If the silence gets too loud, it's not silence anymore. Then she stepped back, took a deep breath, and walked to her car. The girl may have been gone. But Lydia knew this road was full of mirrors. And some were still cracking. That night, Lydia slept in room 4 of the Sleepy Pines motel. The key was actual brass, heavy and cold in her hand. The kind that felt like it belonged to something old, something meant to keep things in just as much as out. The room smelled faintly of mildew and lemon cleaner. A sagging bed with patchwork sheets. A television with no remote. A cracked lampshade. And a mirror. Tall. Narrow. Mounted directly across from the bed. Of course. She stared at it as she unpacked her overnight bag, just a few clothes, a second notebook, and the pages she carried in every jacket pocket now. Her little gospel of warnings. She didn't avoid the mirror. She faced it. Sat on the bed, legs crossed, eyes locked on her reflection. Nothing shifted. Nothing blinked out of sync. Still, something sat behind her eyes that hadn't settled yet. Something unsaid. She leaned forward, speaking softly. "To the thing that once wore my face," she said, "you weren't nothing. You were too much. Too many stolen feelings. Too many pieces that didn't belong to you. That's why you couldn't survive." Her voice trembled, just slightly. "You were a patchwork made of pain, stitched together with forgetting. But I remembered. And that's what ended you. She stood, walked to the mirror, and touched the surface with her fingertips. Cold. But real. I'm not angry anymore, she whispered. Just watching. Behind her, the motel creaked. A soft groan of wood settling under wind. She turned in. Left the bathroom light on. Not out of fear, but respect. She understood now. There would always be something just beyond the glass. Watching. Waiting. Not always malicious. But always hungry. The world was full of echoes. Fragments. Lonely shadows that craved shape. And some of them would try to take yours. She curled beneath the blanket and shut her eyes. If she dreamed, she wouldn't remember. And for once, that was okay. Morning brought fog. It rolled across the motel parking lot in thick waves, blanketing the cars, the trees, the neon vacancy, sign that buzzed in soft protest. Lydia stood outside room 4, arms folded across her chest, breathing in the damp stillness. This fog felt different. Not ominous, not quite, but expectant. Like the space between an inhale and an answer. She tossed her bag into the passenger seat, closed the door softly, and slid into the driver's side. Grace's engine started without hesitation. Reliable, familiar. Like an old friend who no longer needed to ask where they were going, only whether they were ready. Lydia drove slowly through the mist, headlights low, wipers ticking just once or twice. Back on the highway, the world blurred into gray. She thought about how many times she'd seen this kind of morning. Back when she used to run errands or drive to campus or pull into a coffee shop with a to-do list, and an aching jaw from clenching it all night. Back then, she never saw anything. She just moved. Now, every shape that passed, every silhouette in the fog, meant something. Or could. And that changed everything. As she approached a narrow bridge, she spotted a figure ahead. A man, maybe mid-40s. Tall still, standing too close to the guardrail. Her breath caught. Not because of the resemblance to anything monstrous, but because of how he didn't move. Not even when the car slowed. Lydia pulled onto the shoulder. Rolled the window down. "Hey," she called gently. "You all right?" The man turned slowly. His eyes were sunken, tired, but present. He looked at her with a kind of dull confusion, like he hadn't expected anyone to ask. "I think," he said, "I've been here a while." Lydia nodded. "The road does that." He blinked. "Feels like I forgot something. Or maybe someone." She reached into the glove box, pulled out one of the folded copies, held it out the window. The man stepped forward, took it wordlessly, and read the first few lines. Then looked back at her. "I saw her once," he murmured. "She looked like my daughter." Lydia met his gaze. "She wasn't. I know that now." He stepped away from the rail, looked down at the paper, then at the road ahead. "Thank you?" Lydia smiled faintly. "Don't thank me. Just keep driving." And he did. She watched his taillights vanish into the fog. Then she turned back to her own path. The road stretched quiet and endless ahead. Lydia's thoughts wandered, drifting as softly as the fog. Every time she gave someone the list, every time she saw their eyes focus again, it felt like lighting a match in the dark. A tiny, flickering rebellion against whatever thing still lurked just out of view, waiting for someone too tired, too broken, too silent to say no. She didn't pretend she was fixing everything. But she was changing the shape of the story. And maybe that was enough. She stopped at a roadside chapel around noon. It was one of those tiny, non-denominational places travelers stumbled across when they needed somewhere else. The door was unlocked. No one inside. Just pews, sunlight through warped glass, and the musty scent of old wood and paper hymnals. She walked slowly up the aisle and sat in the second pew, facing the empty altar. There was no reason to pray. but she spoke anyway. "I don't know what you were," she said. "I don't know how you started, or why you need people like me. But I know what you took." Her voice didn't echo. It landed soft, absorbed by time and dust. "You used grief like bait, loneliness like a doorway, and I walked right through it." She stared up at the warp-stained glass above the altar, a faded blue dove surrounded by broken light. "I'm not angry," she whispered. "I just won't let you do it again." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the very first copy of her list, the original, the one written in pencil and folded 100 times. She unfolded it carefully, ran her fingers across each creased line. Then she placed it on the pulpit, a quiet offering. She turned to go but stopped at the threshold. One last look at the pews, at the sunlight warming the old wood, at the space, empty, but not forgotten. Then she stepped out into the light. Grace waited, engine ticking softly. As she drove off, the chapel faded behind her. But the mission, if that's what it was, stayed. Because the road didn't stop. And neither would she. The towns began to blur. Each one different, but the same in the ways that mattered: quiet diners with half-lit signs, gas stations where the pumps clicked but no one ever looked you in the eye, motels with humming ice machines and mildew in the carpet. Lydia stopped in them all. She left notes tucked into restroom mirrors, pinned lists to bulletin boards and community corks near laundromats, slipped folded copies of her rules into glove boxes at mechanic shops and under windshield wipers of idling cars parked a little too long in the shadows. She started seeing signs of others. Not the girl, but the echoes. People who had almost been taken, and who bore the marks. Eyes that darted toward mirrors, the twitch of a shoulder when someone stood too close behind them, or the nervous way they scanned their own reflection before leaving a room. And some of them were helping. In a dusty cafe 2 towns north of the chapel, she saw another list, not hers, tacked above a payphone that hadn't worked in years. It read, "If you forget your name, do not get in." A scribble beneath it added, "She likes the ones with broken clocks." Someone else was writing. Someone else knew. And the road, once cold and quiet, now seemed wary. Like it was listening. Like it realized the passengers were talking. Lydia kept going. Each stop, each page, each conversation chipped away at the veil. Until she reached a crossroads. Literally. A 4-way intersection with a blinking yellow light, and no signs to tell you where either path led. She killed the engine and sat. It was there again, that hum in the air. Not danger. Decision. In her rear view nothing stirred. No reflection smiled. No whispers tickled the back of her mind. But she felt it, like a breath held in the lungs of the earth itself. The road wasn't just a place. It was a choice. It always had been. And now? It was hers. She stepped out of the car, looked down each road, then up at the sky. The clouds parted, just enough to reveal the sun. She smiled. Not a passenger. Not anymore. She was the driver. Lydia walked to the center of the intersection, gravel crunching beneath her boots, the warm wind tugging strands of hair across her cheek. Each direction stretched out like a different kind of future. One winding through pine-thick hills, one trailing past rusted silos and abandoned barns, one diving into dense forest, the last toward a shimmer of heat rising off desert flats. She could go anywhere now. There was no map to follow. Because this wasn't about escape anymore. This was purpose. She walked back to the car and opened the passenger side door, not to let something in, but to offer something out. She took the final page from her notebook and slid it gently onto the seat. The ink was still fresh, but the words had been with her since that night in the rain. She read them once more before stepping back. To whoever finds this car. If you're reading this, then you've felt it too. The whisper behind your name. The tug at your spine. The thing that watches you through the mirror when your grief is loudest. This car isn't cursed. You aren't cursed. But the road you're on. It listens. And it remembers the ones who forget themselves. Don't let it. Here's what I know. If something asks to ride with you, say no. If you look in the mirror and something smiles first, pull over. If you hear a voice behind you and you're alone, do not answer. If you feel like you're being hollowed out, scream. Even if no one hears. Scream anyway. And most of all, don't forget who you are. Not even for a second. Because that's how she gets in. Lydia W. She folded the paper carefully. Left it on the seat. Closed the door. And walked away. Not because she was running. But because she was done. Let someone else take grace now. Let them feel what it means to face the road, and win. Lydia didn't need to drive anymore. She had walked through fire and fog. Through loss and longing. Through reflections that lied. And she came out whole. She reached the edge of the trees, sunlight warming her shoulders, the wind carrying the scent of dust and pine. Ahead, a narrow trail curved between the trees, foot-worn and forgotten. It wasn't paved. It wasn't safe. It wasn't marked. But it was hers. She took her first step down the path. And behind her, the car sat silent, waiting for the next soul too tired to keep their grief inside. But maybe this time, they'd find the list. Maybe this time, they'd read it. And maybe, just maybe, they'd drive themselves home.